podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Some of the topics are addiction, fear, faith, self-compassion, relationships, codependency, emotional intelligence, and more. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Every day, millions of people face traumatic changes to their health. When everything familiar turns upside down, what if they could take better control of their situation by writing about their experience and communicating more effectively by expressing their feelings? What if their struggles became a source of empowerment and inspiration? Research indicates that expressive writing, dealing with one's deepest thoughts and feelings, may contribute to improved physical and emotional health. For those with cancer and/or chronic disease, everyone, patients, caregivers, and medical staff, has a story to tell. Many are uplifting, while others may not be easy to digest. Through their authenticity, they reflect the staggering realities of dealing with chronic diseases. By opening your heart and giving writing a chance, you can discover the gift of personal expression for you and everyone you know. Welcome to Write for Life. David Tabatsky. In this episode, David Tabatsky talks change, resilience, emotions, writing for healing, and other thoughts in between. David is a writer, editor, teacher, and performing artist based in New York City. His memoir, American Misfit, was released in November 2017. He has coached, co-written, and edited several inspirational memoirs of people surviving cancer, stroke, abuse, and conversion therapy, as well as numerous self-help guides. David is the co-author of several books about cancer, including Prescription for Hope, Reimagining Women's Cancers, and Reimagining Men's Cancers, HCI 2016, The Cancer Book, 101 Stories of Courage, Support, and Love, Chicken Soup for the Soul, 2009, and the author of Write for Life, Communicating Your Way Through Cancer. David has worked professionally in theater and circus as an actor, clown, and juggler at New York City's Lincoln Center, Radio City Music Hall, and the Beacon Theater, and throughout the United States and Europe. Most notably at the Chameleon in Berlin, Neuen Theater in London, Foires Pigalle in Paris, and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where The Stage wrote, "He is a supremely skillful performer and fine actor, reaching levels no other comics have matched at this fringe." David wrote and directed Kindercircus Taborka at the renowned Tempodrome in Berlin. To read David's full biography, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Here is the interview with David Tabatsky.
In your own words, who is David Tabatsky?
Oh my gosh. All right. Do you have like 3 or 4 hours, or
Yeah.
going to run like a piece of Robert Wilson theater that takes like 24 hours? Yeah, I hope you're in a comfortable position because I'm not watching the clock. I'll answer your question. It really that's a good one, but it really depends on any given day and any different time. I think how I identify myself is fluid. And I find that that's actually a fundamental thing in my work as well. When I work with people and do workshops, either in small groups or big, speaking for hundreds or thousands of people, a lot of the stuff I do in the beginning is really about identity. And because that has so much to do with how we bounce out into the world, is how we first see ourselves. So like if you just make it analogous to an airplane taking off to go from one destination to another, you know what you're getting into. You know what kind of a plane it is. You know the seating arrangements and all the other things. And sort of like what vehicle am I putting myself in? Where am I funneling that identity in when I go out into the world? And so for me, because I do a lot of work in these last years, through the writing work that I'm doing, I sometimes spend so many hours doing that work and recovering from it, or restoring myself to do more, or reacting to it, because a lot of it is very, very emotional. That my identity is a little different in that place than when I'm out in the world, or even right now when I'm talking to you. There's a different voice, or when I'm interacting with my children, that changes, and it's also changed over the years as they go from little ones to big ones. So I think identity is a really fluid thing. Really meant to avoid your
Yeah.
question, but I don't know where to begin, because I like to think that over the years I expand as a person, and so my identity also changes and expands. But I guess at the core, that's the hardest thing, is like, how do you answer that question at its very core? Like in the 25 words or less thing, I don't give that too much thought. I don't try to figure that out really, because I've never found that it takes me to a place that I need to get to. I guess maybe that helps, because maybe somehow I feel at home with who I am without labeling it.
I like that. You don't have this fixed idea of who you are. That is interesting. You didn't say anything about your profession. You just kind of, in a way, you are just life, and you're just flowing with life. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Like when I work in the cancer community and I have a room full of patients, caregivers, survivors, maybe some medical professionals, doctors and nurses and things, all mixed in together. And we talk about what happens in the moment that someone is diagnosed with cancer, how that suddenly seems to throw their identity in question, right? Up until this moment, I was a mother, I was a lawyer, but then as soon as the doctor said, "I'm sorry to tell you, you have cancer," suddenly those two things didn't change. You're still a mother, you're still a lawyer, you're still, someone who goes to this church or volunteers at this place, or coaches little league girls baseball, or whatever this woman is. You're still all of those things. So the whole point is, now on top of it, you're taking on another layer. It's like you're putting on another layer of clothes. Now you're going to be a cancer patient with all of those other things, but that's not going to replace all of those other things. That's what happens for a lot of people, that them becoming diagnosed, then for some, if they don't have real security in who they are otherwise and what their roles are in life, that can erase all of them, or that can put them all under threat. And that's what I try to help people navigate through. For example, and that can happen with a lot of things. For example, I think a lot of people now in this time, because of all the political strife and so much hatred and negativity and all the different isms that are coming out of the closet and rearing their ugly heads, people are trying to figure out what their identities are in relation to that. So it's not all about sickness or disease. It can be, it's about a lot of different things.
So true, David. And that is the topic of our conversation today. But before we talk about how to communicate our way through cancer and chronic disease, I have a few questions for you, warm-up questions. How did you become a writer?
Oh, wow. I think I started writing even in high school when I started to do some theater on my own outside of school because I was really just interested in doing it. But there was no structure for what I thought I wanted to do within the normal public high school. So I kind of started to create things on my own. I had a really great friend who wrote a play that I did when I was a junior or senior in high school. And he showed me that you can just write stuff. Just if what you want to tell a story, make it up. Um, and that was outside the realm of English class where you had an assignment to, what did you do on the weekend? And you have to write about it kind of a thing. Or an essay about what do you think about, world peace, that kind of thing. But it has to, a certain amount of words and you have to write it. Your penmanship has to be good and you have to hand it in and you get a grade. That was all in the realm of school and academics. To do it in a freestyle way, that also then continued into high school when I started to work as an actor and learning, going through all those fundamentals with traditional things and a lot of experimental theater at the time was really, really big, and that movement was really surging in the United States when I went to college. And so that was a way of storytelling. So some of it was written down. I mean, you write down certain things. For example, when you're working on a movement piece, even a dance piece, you're not writing in a traditional sense, but you're notating. There's a whole way to note movement, you know, um, and to annotate it on the page because you have to, otherwise it can't all stay in your head. So that's the origination of storytelling for me. We're through those lenses, through theater, using the skill sets of theater. And then for me, also, I got into using a lot of circus arts and variety arts and things like that. So those are my tools for telling stories. And so that's where I started to write through all those. And the way I had to notate what they were. Um, and that just carried on from there into a lot of different forms.
And today you help people through writing, which is a wonderful thing. What motivates you to be a good person, to do good in the world?
Well, I grew up in a Jewish household. My parents were both religious, not orthodox, not extreme in that way. I mean, it's all relative.
Right.
What I felt like it was extreme sometimes, but it was. My father was a clergy. He was a cantor in the conservative movement of Judaism. So he's somewhere in the middle. He wasn't orthodox. He wasn't reformed. So he's kind of a moderate clergy, if you will, if you put it in political terms, on that scale. But I learned from an early age this concept in the Jewish religion. It's called tikkun olam, and it translates really to repairing the world. It's really the Jewish version of trying to make the world a better place. The Christian faith has their way of doing it. The Islamic faith has a similar vocabulary to it. They're all kind of the idea that you need to see the world beyond your own myopic vision. See that there are other people there who don't have what you have, or somebody needs help, or it's and you it has to be intentional, though. It doesn't happen without intention. And so I learned that from an early age, and I saw my parents do it. Even when I would remember, my parents didn't have very much money, but they would contribute $1 or $3 or $5 to various different organizations. And I remember helping, like I'd put the stamps on the envelopes because that was back, obviously, you're not making online contributions. You're doing it, with physical things. And it was a physical thing. You had to write out. I'd watch my father write out the check, or my mother, and then you put the stamps on, you put the return address label, and you have to take them and put them in the mailbox. And so there's actual, for a child, there's a physicality even to it, because that's how you relate to it as far as what's physical, what's tangible. And I would ask questions about it. And I realized as I got older they would tell me, hey, you know what? If we just give $5, but there's 10 other people in our neighborhood who are giving $5 each, and then in the neighborhood around the corner, and then across the highway, and in the next town, the next town, the next town. And I started to figure out, okay, you just multiply that around the whole United States. It's not just one person giving $1 or $5. Suddenly it's the whole penny thing. You save your pennies and suddenly there's a lot. And you see how, like, children who have penny drives in school, and you think, oh, on the one hand, it's really cute. And then you realize it's not that. It's more than cute. They just raised like $1,000. These little kids, they just came up with $7,000 worth of pennies, and they're going to feed people. They're going to feed children who live in their same town who aren't fortunate like they are, and they go to school hungry. Now there's food for them. So that was really imprinted in me early on, as a child, and so I feel like now, as I've gotten older and I become, supposedly a responsible adult, uh, that I need to carry that on. I did that all through raising my own children, uh, and it really feeds my work on a psychological way. That is really what motivates me. Not every single project, in all honesty, that I do has that merit. Sometimes I have to take jobs that aren't necessarily have social redeeming value. They might be a little bit more commercial, but they also give me the money sometimes to invest into my cancer community work, where I can like do stuff for free because I have money from another project. So it's all related in a way. It's not vacations. I wish I would, allow myself to take vacations. I kind of need one, but it's just not in my DNA. And But that's what drives me is that concept of tikkun olam, which I don't walk. I don't. I'm just identifying that for you by these words because I think it has importance, but it's not. I don't think of it in those words exactly every day. But that is a mission that does drive me every day in my work, because it's not always easy. It's a draining emotionally. It can be really tough. Um, yeah. So but it's not hard to come back to that intention at some point every day or night.
I like that, David. I like that a lot. With that in mind, what do you think is the world's greatest need?
Wow. Is this like your big day your it's like this, like when you say this is National Big Day question. Okay. Yeah, really. I'm going to ask you a little. No low hanging fruit here with you. Okay. Uh, right. Um, I think it's the simple stuff. I think that we forget just really basic things, kindness and common sense. Bam, it's done. If we could just dictate our lives through the lens of kindness and common sense, um, yeah, I think that would do a lot of good.
I agree.
You could really move the needle in big ways. I mean, I support the idea when we say in certain situations we do need radical change, whether it's in the structure of our economy or it's in, our priorities of where the government puts money. Like if we could just put the same amount of money we put into a new fighter airplane, if we could just put that into Alzheimer's research, that would be money better spent. Sure, but you also have to be realistic, and so you can yell and scream and jump up and down, and, for that to happen. But there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't. So you have to go sometimes for the low hanging fruit and fix those. For example, it sounds kind of silly, but why not just pay attention in the moment that you are? So if you're walking down the street and somebody falls down, well, help them up. you know, because so many times do we just keep walking, or we see, or that's metaphorical, or literal. Just there's so many places where there's so many things just in the normal life that we can take care of that are going to help things along the way without getting into the big, complicated, uh, heavy lifting. Just there's so many obvious things that we could do that would help the world to be more
I
peaceful.
agree. So true. Do you believe
Yeah.
in God? And if you do, who and where is God?
Wow, 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 wow. I'd say that it's not a question of belief. I think it's, for me, I don't think it's always a belief thing. Um, because then it's also like how you define belief. Because I think for a lot of people, they kind of determine whether they believe in God based on a transactional approach. Like if I believe in God, I'm going to pray that I'm going to get something back for it. And I think that that gets messed up because if you take it through a transactional lens, then you're kind of left on the short end of the stick, either understanding or being left, feel like you're being, God's not hearing your prayers, or you know all that stuff. So I don't. I think I believe in that there's a spiritual energy in the world that I mean, you could just say like, here I am, I'm talking to you, and you and I are making a connection, and that's done through email and other ways that we met each other. But on the other hand, there is a spiritual connection, like why you, why did you pick me, or why am I actually responding to you as opposed to somebody else, another fit. So there's some spiritual energy maybe that's bringing you and me together in this way, but that's not, I don't feel like that's not whether you believe in God or I believe in God. And when I think about, I mean, I remember, I mean, I grew up in this Jewish tradition. So I was introduced to the Holocaust at an early age when I saw an elderly person standing in the synagogue with these numbers on their arm. And I asked my parents, why do they have numbers on their arm? I mean, it's a pretty normal question. Well, it's not a normal thing. You don't, we didn't grow up on a cow farm, where all the cows are branded with numbers or something. Why does this human being have numbers on their arm? Because it wasn't like there were, everybody did. I didn't, so, and then I got older, you learn more and more about this, and you're going, well, how can there be a God if all these millions of people are getting killed for no good reason? That doesn't, or like, and then you learn more about history and you go, why, if there's a God, why, wow, this God has a really warped, dark sense of humor. He just lets people murder each other. Why is that? Or why are all these millions of people? Why, for example, there's no God in New York City. How can there be if there's 1 in 5 children go to school hungry, go to bed hungry in New York City, in one of the most affluent cities in the whole world? So what? So God's either lazy, or has a really warped sense of humor, or is just nasty, because it doesn't add up. It's not an so I thought years and years ago I stopped doing that equation because it got me nowhere. It just left me frustrated and angry. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to. My world isn't going to be defined about whether I believe in God or not. Absolutely, it's not a binary choice to me. Some days I feel like I do, and some days I still believe, somewhere in a distant place in my mind, I still believe in that kind of Santa Claus image, that, the older guy with the big gray hair and flowing beard. That's God, and fear of God kind of thing. And I still, there's still, that never leaves you because it's imprinted from childhood. So there's a tiny bit of that still there, but I can't make it a binary choice because I think we put ourselves in a corner if we do that.
It makes sense to me.
Do you believe in God? I
Yeah.
mean, I ask you that question. Do you have a yes or no? Do you have a yes or no in that?
I think it's just a word. I don't know if we can really define. It seems like we are trying to define something that cannot be expressed with words. Maybe love is the closest, I think. Unconditional love, I would say, is the closest thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would make more sense. Because I think a lot of times what happens is people make you answer that question, and then it's a question of, well, are you going to be a member of the club or not?
Yeah, right.
Yes, or you're not. Like, are you going to come to church or synagogue, or the mosque, or you're in it or you're not? And that's sort of like, are you in this Democratic Party, or are you in the Republican Party, or do you agree with this policy, or again, it's, why is everything a binary absolute choice? Like life is a lot more complex. complicated than that.
Yeah. Yeah, unconditional love, I would say. Yeah, first for ourselves and then passing that on to others in life itself.
Well, I would vote for that for the most part, but then I'm saying some people, you know what? Some people behave so badly that I'm not really sure my love is unconditional for that person, to be really honest. They're going, I'm going to give you an open mind, but I'm not sure, it's not 100% because, you're doing too much damage. Um, yeah. So anyway,
Do you love yourself unconditionally?
no, no, I have to put some conditions on because that's related also to discipline and intention. Like, so there's certain things I have to be willing to say, man, I don't love so much how I responded to that person, or I don't like, you were lazy. No, I don't love what that choice you just made, or no, you shouldn't have, like just been kind of given a cold shoulder to the waiter in the restaurant the other day because you were, whatever. Just like, so I know it's not like unconditional love, but it's so there's a certain, I have to earn it. Um, so that's how I try to hold myself accountable. Then I'm like, oh yeah, unconditional love. Yeah, you got it all. If I earn it, I need to
That's
earn it.
cute. Maybe you're just sort of judging the behavior, the actions, not really who you are. We behave in different ways depending, like you said, different situations. The identity will change.
But yeah, yeah, on that level, there, yeah, you're right. Then, yeah, on a deeper, just in that like existence level, yeah, there. One would hope that more people would have that unconditional love because I think a lot of people behave badly because they don't love themselves and they don't even like themselves. So they lash out at everybody else just because they don't like who they are. Um, and I wish we could. That's a good place for healing. A lot of people, if we could just fix that fundamental thing, ooh la la, that would be nice.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
My last warm up question for you, David. What do you think is your purpose in this life?
Well, there's some version of I'll just keep it clean because there might be children listening to this or something down the road. It's really to question the status quo, to mess with it, to play with it, to stretch it, to bend it, to not just make assumptions. And that doesn't mean like to say, well, that's an arbitrary choice. Somebody put a red light on the street. It doesn't mean red to me. I'm going to drive through it. Of course, I don't mean that, because you have to cooperate with a group, a group setting here. We have to live in the world with other people. You don't get to make all the rules. So a certain amount of status quo, like traffic lights, need to be respected. At least, most of the time. Uh, and so okay, that I'm not trying to be an anarchist in that regard, but I feel like there has to be a certain amount of personal anarchy and interactive anarchy with other people because that's what really makes connections. That's where really you connect with someone. So you're not just saying, oh, this person's really beautiful, like this woman looks so beautiful, I just want to tell her that she's beautiful. What is that? That's nice. That's cosmetic, but what is it? What is it? Where does it really take you? So you kind of upset the status quo and kind of come in through a side door or a back door and figure out how do I get to know who this person is. That's just a very superficial example. The other thing is systemically, like to not just to say someone is being a racist or an anti-Semite, but why? What system? What's questioning the system of why that they even got to behave that way? You know, and so those are the things that I try to do also in my work. To a certain point, it has to drive to make storytelling something that people will connect with. So and sometimes that's done in a lot of different ways. Then you get into questions of craft, but at its heart, I think what's driven me, I realize now in reflection, there's been this constant thing. It really is about questioning the status quo. Um, Like, for example, with religion, I grew up with this idea, like you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. And there's all these laws, follow this law, do this, don't do that. And then at a certain point you go, why? Who decided? Who really decided that all of this is what makes you a good Jew or a bad Jew or a good citizen or bad? It's like, really? What? Yeah. So, okay. Sorry, it might take a little long time to answer that question.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah,
It's a big question.
yeah. Let's talk about the book you wrote, Right for Life. So my first question is, why did you write that book titled Right for Life?
Well, Right for Life, Communicating Your Way Through Cancer, which was the first edition of the book. And then just this past year, Right for Life, Communicating Your Way Through Cancer and Chronic Disease, which is kind of a logical extension of it. So all the same principles that are in there, or 90+% of them, apply not only to cancer, but to people who are challenged by dealing with other chronic illnesses that have side effects and that have short-term issues and long-term issues, both physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And so I think about 10 years ago, it is already, almost 10 years ago, I started to do workshops. I did this book called The Cancer Book, 101 Stories of Courage, Support, and Love. And this was published by Chicken Soup for the Soul Publishing, which is a pretty big brand of stuff. They do a lot of different books. So this is the book I put together for them, only on cancer-related stuff, aptly called The Cancer Book. And so I started then, when that book came out, I was asked to put together workshops that could be done in cancer centers. And I found in these cancer centers, I was traveling around the country doing these, and there was one woman in particular up in Boston at Harvard University at the Beth Deaconess Hospital there that's connected with Harvard, Hester Hill Schnipper. That was an incredible woman. She ran a lot of oncology services up there, and patient services were one of her domains. And her husband was the chief surgeon in for that whole hospital. And she said, I'd been up there a couple times, and then she said, David, some people can't come to your workshops. You got to put a book out or something that I can give to these people so they lose out. They don't, even if they can't be there, or new people come in. What about the people who get diagnosed next week and you're not going to be here? And so she was really the incentive for me to do this book, and I'm forever grateful to her for doing it, for pushing me. And it wasn't really hard to do. It was really a labor of love, and really let me put my own stamp on a personal way, just my own idiosyncrasies and things. Some of the things that we're talking about today, that there were no rules, sort of. I had to find a way to structure this book. And once I figured out a way that I could structure it, I could pretty much kind of go anywhere and use different parts of who I am and what I feel and what my energies are, and bring that into a book where people can take it and use it and make it their own, and stretch it and bend it and and own it for themselves, and make it useful for them and whoever is in their immediate circle. So that's how that started.
So why cancer? Do you have any personal experience with cancer or chronic disease?
I myself have been really lucky that I haven't had any physical diseases of my own. I'm not a cancer survivor. My father had cancer, and he passed away a long time ago. It's in 1987, and from leukemia. And back then, there were no patient services. There were no patient caretaker, family services. There was nothing. The doctor said, the doctor said this, and you said, okay, doctor knows. I don't, and what are you going to do? Go to the library and read an 800-page medical book that you can't understand most of it to find out what they're talking about? There was no like online world that existed to do research. It was also a bit of a a taboo, a bit of a stigma, just the same way like back then, if there was a family in the neighborhood going through the divorce, it was really kind of hush hush. Don't talk about divorce. Ooh, that person has cancer. Don't talk about it because you might catch it if you do. Almost. A lot of people were living in the closet for a lot of different reasons, and it wasn't just about whether it was divorce and disease were big. It wasn't just about people who were gay or something having to repress their lives because people wouldn't accept it. Divorce wasn't very acceptable, and cancer was sort of, don't talk about it because it might creep into our life too, or it's like a pariah kind of a thing. And so for years I didn't realize it until I did this book, and then the things after. That wasn't, I didn't get into this stuff because of my father, but I realized once I started to do it that it made sense because there were so many unanswered questions. There was this kind of uncomfortable, unsatisfied thing that had been inside me for years and years that was pretty frustrating. But I had done a lot of work through the clowning that I did for so long that I got gigs and would do, like, I was doing like clowning in hospitals and in old folks' homes and senior centers and psychiatric units and hospitals and prisons, and working with mental health clinics. And I got sent into like places where they didn't know what else to put in there, so they'd send me. So I always had, because it was pretty flexible. You like when you're doing clowning and if you have a good toolkit of skills, physical skills, and you have an open heart, then you can pretty much go into any area and connect with people and bring a smile to them and some relief and all that. So that work, I think, really informed a lot of this work that I'm doing with cancer too. There's not like a very obvious equation there, but if you look a little deeper, you're going, oh yeah, it's a very obvious connection. All the ingredients overlap beautifully, at least from how I see it and how I come to it. It feels quite natural. So those are all things that inform not only the work I'm doing in the cancer community, but for example, now I'm working on this book, just finishing this book up, called A Mother's Grace, Healing the World One Woman at a Time. And it's a profile of 10 different women around the country who have taken personal trauma and tragedy and turned it into a positive mission. For example, I'm working now, I'm finishing a story. Literally, I'm still working on the story before we got on the phone today, this of a woman who lost her daughter in the Parkland high school shooting in Florida a couple years, and she then created this incredible nonprofit to figure out gun safety in schools, make our schools safe for children. And so she's taken this terrible, unthinkable personal loss and transformed it into a positive thing for lots of people. And there's other stories like that in the book. So for me, this is a very, very synergistic connection with all the other work that I do. And so it just makes perfect sense, because it's taking storytelling and using storytelling as a positive force.
Yes, yeah. Inspirational message. How can we overcome just natural events, right, in life?
Yeah. One story is a woman who was wiped out in Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans years ago, who now, her nonprofit is huge. She's restoring, almost like street by house, family by family, street by street, restoring New Orleans. That came from her own personal experience. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to writing, what makes writing a healing tool, in your opinion?
Well, I see it on two levels if you break it down. One of them is the common sense approach. It's very pragmatic. And the other one gets into more deeply emotional, carefree things. For example, when I do a workshop and I could ask people, when you go to the doctor, let's just say you've just been diagnosed, so you got the blood test back or the CAT scan or whatever it is that confirms your pathology, that you have this disease in your body. And now you're going to the doctor to figure out a game plan for how you're going to handle it, right? And so you're going to have a short, relatively short amount of time because your oncologist has a limited amount of time to see you. So how many people here, I don't even ask how many. If someone's like, so you're all write down your questions and everything, right? And I do this intentionally to set them up. I see everybody got to write down your questions, just, and then I stop because I see some blank faces and I go, oh, wait a second. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't have taken this for granted. So I look at a person, I say, you're not writing down your questions about what you want to ask your doctor. So, okay, let me just get this straight. You've just been diagnosed with cancer. Your head is exploding from this news, right? You're having probably some pretty bad sleepless nights because you're afraid. Fear has invaded, and fear doesn't let go very easily. So you got fear, right? And fear of the unknown. And you're just going to walk into your doctor's office tomorrow and remember everything you want to ask. You are the most amazing person I have ever met in my life. You are, Kate, you're superhuman, because I don't know, I've never met anyone who can do that. And so I take it, I've been a little sarcastic and playful because you want to have, if you can allow people to laugh at themselves a little bit, in the beginning, it's an invitation to kind of really make something useful out of this. So I try to create that environment. And so I said, okay, forget about writing with your English teacher leaning over you and telling you all the things you get wrong and you have bad grammar and blah, 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 blah. Or oh my God, I have writer's block, which is a bunch of blah, blah, blah. Just write down 10 questions you need to ask your doctor. And then read those questions out loud to your husband or your wife or your mother or your sister, whoever's going to accompany you to the doctor, and say, does this sound like me? Is this really me? Am I asking a question that I think I should ask because it sounds good and I read that online? Or is it a question I need to know for me? And so check that stuff, go into the doctor and be prepared and bring a tape recorder. And so a lot of that, so then you can write down, you listen back and write down the things that are important to you. That's where writing is just a pragmatic tool. It's just you need to, because your head's too full of all this other noise. So you need to distill it. You need to filter through and write down what's important. And then, for example, how do you communicate this to your family? This news, how do you tell your children that you're just diagnosed with cancer? How do you tell your husband or your wife? Well, it's just like any actor. An actor doesn't go on stage and know all the lines. They have to work at it. They have to practice them. So just like that, you've never been in this situation before. You've never been in this play. How are you going to tell them? What words are you going to use? Why don't you write them down first? Say them out loud. Is that you? Is that who you want to be when you say it? Are you using the words that really express yourself? Well, then try a different word or mix it up a little different. Let's try it like this. And I give them some examples and things like that. You got to figure out your own Rubik's Cube of communication. And then from there, it goes on to try to figure out fear, because it all comes back to fear. At the end of the day, just like we talked about religion, at the end of the day, we can use a million different words. God, yes, God, no. You hit it, and you just talked about love. So the elephant in the room is fear. So I take it straight on. Within the first 20 minutes of a workshop, we're right in it. We're going deep in it, because what am I going to do at the end of a whole workshop that you're dancing around to go, oh, by the way, good luck with your fear. Thank you and goodbye. Are you, that's just highly irresponsible, let alone absurd. So I try to go dive into it, relatively quickly, because that's the bear. That's the mountain to climb. That's Sisyphus, pushing the rock up the hill and it rolls back down. And we deal with our fears. They don't just go away. We have to massage them. We have to We have to love them. We have to hate them. We got to do a lot of different things with them because they're there and they're going to stay for quite a while. Even survivors who have had a clean bill of health years later, there's still that latent fear that it's going to come back. Um, so we can write away we can write our way through some of that, and sometimes it's just saying, um, not being not in a way, not being afraid to say what you feel. What are you hiding it for? You know what I mean? Because what you might not be here next week or next month or next year. That's reality. That's the damn reality of it. So just get it out. If you love somebody, tell them you love them now. And if you're afraid, say you're afraid now. What are you trying to be? What are you trying to be a hero for? You know, for what? So yeah, so and that really varies so much from person to person and what the environment is and what kind of support system they have. So I need to be careful to find the balance in there. So it might sound a bit extreme if somebody would hear this now, but it's not like I'm literally grabbing people by the shirt collar and shaking them, although some people that would be a good technique. But that's really what they need. But you have to come to that, you know, um, you know, carefully and lovingly. But at the same time, you get in there, or you're not doing anything. You can't dance around the truth, right? And especially because these things are physically held for the most part. You're in a cancer center. Like, just take in the environment where you are. It's like, why are we all here? We're all physically here in a cancer center. So you can't pretend that you don't have cancer, or the person you love more than anyone else in the world has cancer. We just need to face the truth, um, and it's a lot healthier when people can do it. So that's what I try to help him do, and give him the tools to break it down into small bites and dose it out. Just like we dose out medicine, we have to dose our way sometimes through communication. So you can't just say to somebody, okay, tell me how you feel. That's just way too big. You got to break that down into doable doable doses.
I agree. I think I had three questions on fear, and one of which is, what is real about our fears and what's not real?
Well, I guess my first answer would be some of the fears we're conditioned to fear. If you break it down, even there's this. You made me think of this TV commercial, and it's so silly. It's just for like a chewing gum or some sort of breath freshener. There's an older guy sitting with a young boy. He's an adolescent. He's like 14. The boy's 14, and they're in a park and they're playing chess. And right across the way there, very close by, are three young girls, the same age as the boy, give or take. And they're just sitting there. And the boy, trying to play chess, but he's sort of looking over at the girls because he's interested. And I think he kind of looks like he knows them, like he knows who they are from school or something. They're not total strangers, or might not, wouldn't. So, and the older guy, makes a move on the chess thing, and then he looks at him, and it's like, don't keep trying to play chess here. Don't here. And he slides him over the product that they're selling, which is some, freshening gum or whatever it is, chewing gum that's good for your breath. So it's like, so it's like the older guy saying to the younger one, hey, listen, the first thing you got to do, you're going to go try and chat up these girls. You got to have good, you have to have bad breath. You can have bad breath or you'll never get anywhere. Forget it. Go break it right there. So you could be the cutest kid in the world, but if you got bad breath, you're done. You're toast for the day. So he slides over the thing. The kid puts it in his mouth, goes over, and then the camera pans over, and you see them starting to, smile and have fun, and then the product comes up, and the commercial's over. But in that moment, it's like The kid is afraid. The boy is naturally shy. I really want to talk to these girls, but I'm shy. And so the guy gives them the tool. He gives them, it's like, if you chew this gum and you know you have good breath, then you know you're already halfway there, right? Um, and so uh, when you asked that question, it made me think of that commercial right away, because that's boiling it down. That's like such a simple thing, but it's a basic fundamental. It's so when we talk about fear, we have to look at it from the basic thing. What are you actually afraid of? Are you afraid of dying? Because that's a big thing. Are you afraid of the physical pain that you're now going to have to go through as a side effect of the chemotherapy or surgery or radiation that you are facing? That's a valid fear if you've never encountered that before. I know so many patients. Sometimes they tell me it wasn't the physical pain. I know that's going to suck, but I've been through, like, I was an athlete for years, and I know I've had broken bones, or I've had knee surgeries, or I know what it's like, and I know what it's like also to have to take pain drugs, and that's not what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the physical thing. I'm afraid that I won't be able to parent my children, or I'm afraid if I die. I'm not afraid of the death part for me and my belief in God and all those things. I'm afraid that my children are going to have to grow up without a mother or father. So then when we identify that what they are, so it's not just this blind fear. So sometimes what we do, even by writing them down, when you put something on a piece of paper, you can take ownership of it. You see it in your own handwriting, your own physical handwriting. That's why I really try to stress that. And we do that. We have notebooks and stuff where I ask people, I'm not asking you to put your phone away because I don't want you to, I want you to be here only and not communicate with the outside world. If any of you who are parents, I understand, keep your phone there, because if your kid texts you, they don't know that you're in this workshop, text them back. So then you have a clear mind and you can focus. That's fine. I don't mind the phones being there. But don't use the phone to jot the notes down, because that's anonymous. Whether no matter what font you use, it's not your handwriting. It won't own it. It just looks like, oh, I like that font. Oh, I like that font. But it's not you. Somebody else made that font. Um, so write in your own handwriting, and write it slow enough that you can read your own writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Own it. It's you. It's the way you physically express yourself ever since you're a child, and where your handwriting has evolved to. Um, and that, I think that has a lot of value. It sounds superficial, but especially nowadays, where we spend so much time on keyboards, whether they're on our phone or an iPad or a computer, whatever it is, it's like little fingertip. And the physiological thing that happens when you write by hand. And then I said, for example, when we want to, so if you write down your fears, for example, just an exercise to write down 5 things you're afraid of, just one word, just write them down as one word each. When you see them on paper, they suddenly become tangible or heading that way. And then if they can become somewhat tangible, then they can also become somewhat manageable. Not 100%. I mean, because God, we're not working miracles here, but they become somewhat manageable, and and then when that happens, someone's able to breathe, and when we can breathe, we have a potential for health, because we need good breath. It's a thing.
Yeah, I like that. This way of dealing with fears. And you mentioned tools like the commercial, and then in this case, it might be accessing common sense, just trying to understand what is that we're afraid of. And perhaps going back to what you said in the very beginning about what is the world's greatest need, and you said kindness, that it might be part of being kind to ourselves.
Be kind to yourself. Hello,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Kind to yourself by doing some of this actually simple work. It's not that hard when you do it. Most of the time, people in these situations, the fear sets off a soundtrack of noise. And how do you quiet the noise? Or how do you bend it a little bit into a soundtrack that you can lift. Oh, that's got a beat and I could dance to it. You know, I mean, in a way, it kind of is that. Because the noise, you have to admit the noise is going to be there. There's going to be reason for a long time to have for that noise is going to be there. So it's how do you manage it? How do you break it down into bite-sized stuff that you can handle, and you can not completely, no one can completely control that, but it's manageable. You got to make it manageable.
I found this line in your book. There's a funny thing about being sick. What is the funny thing about being sick?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. In the cancer book that I did, without mentioning names, the one woman, I don't remember particularly what cancer she had, but she was in treatment. She'd been in treatment for a while, but she was able to still work, or she'd been back to work, whatever. So she did a normal day of work, an office job of some kind, and then she went to the cancer center to have a chemo treatment. Not a long one. This is like an infusion that wasn't terribly long. And then she was driving home. She said, I got to take care of my car. So she stopped in to wash her car. Just to, which is again, an easy, low hanging fruit, like keep your life normal. Like normally you wash your car every so often, you do things like that. So keep the normal stuff as normal as you can. So she washed her car, and then she pulled over to do the vacuuming of the inside of the car. And she was getting tired. It was early evening. It'd been a long, day of work, and then the treatment, and so she was tired. She's trying to climb. She like vacuumed the back seat. Then she's trying to climb over into the front seat of the car. So she managed to like get one leg over, and she's straddling this other leg to get over. And the big hose with the vacuum cleaner kind of slipped out of her hand and hit her in the head. Not hit her, but just went up against her head and sucked off the wig that she was wearing, because she lost her hair for the most part at that point. The wig was gone, because how these big vacuum cleaners, they're huge, the big opening, and it's gone. Like like it wasn't stuck in the hose, it was sucked in. She's there, she's sitting, she's like got one leg straddling the seat, from the front to the back, and she's and this big hose banging into her, and then the top of the car, so she's sandwiched in, and she's got a bald head, and then she turns and she looks out the window, and there's this big, rather unappealing looking guy standing there laughing his butt off at her. And her first inclination is she's turned off by it, and she's scared. She's not scared. Now, the car's locked, whatever. It's not like that guy's doesn't look like he's going to grab her, reach into the car, but she's just turned off by it. But then within seconds, she's ended up laughing like him. He did her this great favor by he saw it, and it was like a bit of slapstick. And it's sort of like, like a skilled physical comedian would have to rehearse that, yet she did it quite naturally. and there she is, and he's laughing, and then she's laughing, and she felt so light. He just helped her lighten the load of what would have been a horror show. She's now got to drive home with no hair, right? She had no hat in the car or anything, and she's driving home, and she said there was something liberating in that I didn't. It was like I thought this is a wonderful story, and it's obviously a funny story about a particular thing that many women in particular have dealt with, who are wearing wigs around, who you don't know. You don't know they're wearing a wig necessarily, if it's a good wig, and it's their coloring, but they're carrying around a big psychological burden with that wig. There's a reason for it. They never forget the reason, and when they get home and they take it off, that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, I try to work with a sense of humor because, first of all, it just invites good communication with me and the people who are there to participate and or observe, either one. Um, and but to help people figure out that humor in themselves. And I think no matter what situation we're in, if we can laugh at ourselves, um, it's only helpful. I've never heard ever in my life, oh no, I just feel like I laugh at myself too much. Somebody says, no, you know what? You laugh at yourself too much. It's, it's not healthy. You should laugh at yourself less. You should find less things about you. You know, should take yourself more seriously. You know, I mean, come on. That doesn't, that, what, did you ever hear that? Nobody ever, I've never heard anybody say that. Um, so, um, I just think it's a healthy thing physiologically. It's. I mean, there's a couple of cancer centers around who do laugh therapy, um, which is pretty wonderful. It's the same thing like when people don't don't get hugged enough or don't embracing enough. It's a lot of that's undervalued. That's really really undervalued. Um, yeah, I mean, I think every neighborhood should have a hugging center, but it's
Yeah, right. Hugging center. I like that idea. That's fun. So now we have lots of tools here. Kindness,
yeah.
being kind to yourself, common sense, and then your added sense of humor. It's incredibly helpful.
Well, that's part of being kind to yourself. Actually, if you let yourself laugh at yourself, that's self kindness. That's being kind to yourself. Yeah.
You wrote something interesting that caught my attention in your book. What do you mean when you say that life is just a dream? And also, talk to me about the journey to nowhere.
Well, one of my dearest friends, who's been gone now way too long from cancer, my friend Bob Lennox, who talked about life as a dream, and I remember vividly when he put it through that lens for me. Bob is American. He's born, raised in Brooklyn, kind of a normal, casual Catholic, whatever, not casual Christian, whatever you, I don't know if you can use that term. And, um, and he, but he was really he had been into Buddhism a lot. And this really brought him, I think, through that and his work as a musician, um, and all the improvisational work he'd done as a musician, besides composing so many songs. This is what his equation was. Life is just a dream. And I think it was his way of making sense of it all and the fact that he knew he was dying and that he was leaving children in the world and his wife and all the other people that he cared about and loved, and that I, I think it's a way to make sense of it, or it's a way to say it's not just me dying. Like all the people that I love and care about them, the fact is that one day they're going to die too. And so this is all our path, and enjoy, just enjoy the dream, because that's all it is. It's very temporary. It's really a transitory thing. Stop hanging on to possessions. Stop hanging on to certain feelings so much. And these principles and these values. I mean, yes, he's not advocating don't have values or don't be good to people or that all that stuff. Nothing matters. He wasn't existential in that way, like nothing matters. Life is just a dream is really much different, because he wasn't saying life is just a nightmare. He could have said that. He's not looking at it that way. So I think it's just a question. That was his vocabulary for finding equilibrium and acceptance. Acceptance. That's not easy picking. That's the big stuff there.
It is, yeah, accepting life, ourselves the way we are, and life the way it unfolds. That takes, I guess, deeper understanding, right? Self-knowledge, perhaps.
Yeah, and that's all that's true. But I think it's also, again, like you asked me before about my belief in God and talking about things that are fluid. I think that that's also fluid. I think, without I'm not advocating for all of us to become really moody people. Like, being moody is fine because it's all fluid. Oh, it's fine. You could just be moody all the time. No, it's not mood. It's not really about mood. It's about you know, so much as not putting ourselves in lanes only, like I'm this or I'm that, and if I'm not all that, what am I? Then I'm nothing. No, you're more than that. So, for example, when I talk to people about, a lot of times you see people when they get diagnosed with it doesn't have to be cancer, cancer, diabetes, whatever. They view it as, oh, my life is now shrinking. It's smaller. It's bad. It's all bad. Yeah, no kidding. A diagnosis of any of that stuff is bad. That sucks. It's terrible. You wish you didn't have that. You don't. But why not also say, I need to expand my life now to accommodate this, and as much as I possibly can. Sometimes that's a losing effort. In the end, sometimes the disease is going to be bigger, and no matter what, it's gonna have a bad ending, and that's just true sometimes, but always, um, or what path are you going to take even to that ending? That
Right. Yeah. In your book, you also talk about gratitude. What would you say are the benefits of gratitude when diagnosed with cancer or any other disease for that sake?
well, I think gratitude is a ticket to taking some attention off of ourselves by sometimes writing down, what are we grateful for. You can, when you only have it in your head, it's just in your head. When you write it down and you look and you see what it is on a piece of paper, then it becomes more real. Then there's an objectivity to it. And I think, for example, imagine if you wrote down on 10 different pieces of paper the things that you're most grateful for, and you put them down, one word, or the name of a person or a thing or whatever that you're grateful for, and you put it on an index card, and you put it on the floor in a circle, and you stood in the middle of it. How powerful might that be, um, as a momentary exercise? Um, and I think that if we can surround ourselves with gratitude, even in the midst of the worst things, there's always something to be grateful for. It's really, a lot of it's low hanging fruit. It's not very hard to figure out. Um, but that's why writing them down sort of is a stepping stone to also not forgetting them. So you have your list. Some people I know, they put that list on the refrigerator and they see it every time they go get something to eat. They're reminded of what they're grateful for. They put it in the bathroom, so when they're in there fussing around with their face in the mirror, they're reminding themselves of what they're grateful for. They're not just putting their attention all on their own, face.
Right.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful phrase you just said. There is always something to be grateful for. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people right now, not in our circle here, but all over the world, really are hurting right now, whether for real reasons or symbolic reasons, since uh, this horrible tragic thing this Sunday of when Kobe Bryant and his daughter and these 7 people were killed in this helicopter. And but I think, I know this has really hit me pretty hard, and but we realize, like, why is it hitting me so hard? And I realize, like, for so many years that I've known him and watched him and followed his path, um, literally and symbolically, but there's so many great, like, things to be grateful for in that too. Like there's so many hours of pleasure watching him play basketball and seeing who he's become, for all his good things and his bad things that he's done in his life, to see how he's evolved, in mostly all positive ways. And uh, um, so um, there's, you're hurting from that loss. It's like, I still I still feel an empty space, that, without my father. But I but there's a lot of things that I'm grateful about with my father, or I can, remember. I think out of anything we can often find, um, we can find gratitude. And I just think even if it's just a balancing trick, even if it's a trick we play in our minds to help us and balance out the things that we're anxious or depressed about or feel negative about, uh, in the world, well, then just for every one you feel depressed about, just find one that you feel grateful for, and that then you have the scales are more in balance, and you can kind of walk forward with a little bit of a lighter
Yeah.
step.
Thank you so much, David, for your words. Yeah,
Well,
that's so true. Would you like to add anything before I
thank you.
ask you unrelated questions to the subject?
No, I'm good.
What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself?
Ooh, what challenged me in our talk right now? Well, I know that I can put words together in a pretty good way. Maybe, just whether some of that's natural and some of that is from, years and years of working on my craft. So I know that I might have, um, a little bit somewhere, some level of above average ability to do that, and I better, because that's what I that's what I do. But, on the other hand, it's like I think the hardest thing for me is like, well, good, you're preaching a pretty good game there, but are you doing it in your own life? That kind of thing. So that's really kind of the challenge for me, is like, don't just talk a good game, but live a good game.
Right. Yeah, thank you for your honesty and also for being humble. Yeah, because you're a very good writer. What is to be strong?
Well, I hope that there's some strength in that, like kind of like what I just said. Like, for example, I think laughing at yourself takes strength. I mean, I see a lot of people who really have no sense of humor about themselves, and I think, if I had to say whether they're a strong person or a weak, in all honesty, I'd say, "Oh, man, I think they're a little bit kind of weak, because they're like just too hung up on how great they are or how tough they are or anything like that's actually not strength. Um, we see it in politicians, who talk about strong, strong, strong all the time, and really that they're really, what they're telling me is they're weak, weak, weak. And I think that that's also a fluid thing. I think, I might be strong on certain things and weaker on others, or it could change during the course of days, or it depends. I might be, you might feel stronger and more well, uh, just well put together in your own thoughts and mind and body with one person, and secure in that and stable, yet chemistry with another person might invite a certain weaker part of you. I think it also depends on sometimes that with our interactions. For example, some people just get intimidated by doctors simply because they have that MD after their name. They feel like, oh my God, that person knows much more than me. I just have to do whatever they say. I can't question them. I'm like, well, I think it helps. People need to take a deep breath and get past that. You can respect them for their knowledge and all of that, obviously, and they're hopefully they're there to help you, but you can't, let that intimidation factor come, because then you're not showing them who you are. You need to show them who you are, because then they're treating you. They're not just treating your chart, your medical chart. They're treating a human being, um, and that's why I always try to help people do that. Sometimes gently, and sometimes I need to be a little bit more forceful, because people need to be grabbed at that point and say, just, you can assert yourself. It's a healthy thing. It also helps you. You got to make your doctor accountable, in that way, regard too, and be responsible for good communication. Um, so I think I steered a little bit away from that question, but
No, it's great. Great. Thank you. How do you define success?
well, that's a multi-level thing. I mean, gee, that's so relative. Like it feels like a good, successful day here talking to you about these things that are meaningful and hoping that the people who might listen to you and I will will be able to take something that'll be helpful for them. Then I feel pretty nicely successful. Time well spent, um, and the emotional and real investment into that is really worthwhile. Um, so I feel like also when I am emotionally moved by the work that I'm doing, then that's a success. Yeah, I think that when we can go to sleep at night without tossing and turning and without being anxious, that's really successful. Then that's really fortunate because there's so many reasons to not be. There's so many reasons to be anxious about what's going on in the world, or let alone what's going on in our own personal lives. So I think when we're able to find peace, that really is that really is a great success.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, inner peace, right?
Yeah, not to be underrated. You know, it's like, geez, you know, if I had I mean, sure, no, I wouldn't mind to be, you know, like sitting on my backyard right now in Malibu, looking at the Pacific Ocean.
Of
But
course
if
not.
I was just restless and didn't have inner peace, like what value is it? You know? So, you know, now cramped in my little Manhattan apartment, but I feel at peace, then I'm going, oh, I feel pretty successful. Yeah.
If you knew you would lose the body soon, what would you change? What change would you make in your life?
Oh gosh. Uh, I think that I would make want to make sure that there's a big list of people that I want to make sure they know how much they mean to me. And I think that that's something that I want to do better with, without scaring anybody. You know, like, why are you calling me? Are you dying or something?
Right.
Like, I don't want to. That's either just scary or it's hollow. You know, it's like, oh, you just like, oh, you want a check mark? You want to show you're a good person and telling, oh, no, I've always loved you. You know, kind of thing. Yeah, like although it wouldn't be so bad. You know, like who would turn that down? You know, um, and but in the most authentic way that can be, you know, that's within reason. I think that that's actually something to strive for. We take so much for granted every day. I think that that's what I want to get to without making myself all stressed out. You know, I want to try to like smoothly not take things for granted if I can do it in a way that's more relaxed. So I don't know, maybe I just need to do more drugs and alcohol. I'm not really sure.
Okay. No, no, no. Do you believe in life after death?
I'm not sure if I believe. I'm open to all those things. I actually did a project recently with a woman who's, I think she's like in her early 30s. She lost her father some years ago, a few not that long, like 4 years ago, and it was so shattering for her. And she kind of went out looking for him to try and find, like through afterlife and mediums and all different kinds of things, just to have some link to him. She just couldn't bear to that he's gone, and she had to find her own way through that. And by working on her book with her, I was exposed to a lot of those things that I normally don't think about too much. And I thought, wow, I could see myself being open to that. And I think that there is this some form of cosmic energy out there. I don't know if it's literally, excuse me, falls into the category of afterlife or parallel life, or nothing ever really has a beginning, middle, and end. It's all just sort of this horizontal existence, you know, that's all there on equal terms. I'm not sure, but I'm open to it just because uh the other part where we're just like a deer and we're gonna, you know, like one day you're a deer and the next day you're roadkill. Uh, that's a little depressing. So I try not to go there too much,
Right.
because what does that get you? You know. So somewhere between that, and I'm open to it. I am open. I don't say that I just absolutely believe in it, because I don't know what it is. So when you believe in something that you don't know what it is, then it's hard to say that you absolutely believe in it, because then what are you actually believing in? I don't believe that I'm going to go and there's going to be like the gates of heaven and I'm going to go sit on a cloud, and you know, and talk to Groucho Marx or something. No. Or Gandhi, where I can finally go, Gandhi, I've been waiting all these years to meet. So tell me about that, because it's kind of evasive here in real life. How is it working here in heaven? It's not, I don't know. I don't believe in that exactly. But it would that'd be fun. Fun.
Yeah,
So
yeah, fair enough. Not believing in, you don't have a belief system.
not a finite one. Not a finite one. No.
And my last question. What are
Sure.
3 things about life you know for sure?
Well, I would say you have a great voice for radio, for this medium. So that's one thing I'm right in front of me. I know that
Sure.
for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
What do I
I'll
know
take that
about
one.
what do I know about for sure? Um, I know that it's worth putting good energy into, because seeing, for example, from all the teaching I've done over the years, when I see kids light up with an idea, or I see kids light up when they learn something, that that's worth everything. When I have had in my time in my life the moments that I'm holding hands with someone that feels just right, that their hand just fits, then that is everything. It's just in that one little connection, you know. And I think, yeah, there we go. I think I don't know, I lost count, but those two are those are good right there.
Yeah, I love what he said, the last thing he said about the experience of human connection. Yeah, like it's almost like music, right? It's just there's harmony. Everything is just
Exactly.
perfect.
Oh,
Yeah,
totally. There's music in all of those. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, there's a personal, inside soundtrack to all of them, and that comes back again to this inner peace. It does come back to that feeling of contentment, and it could just be, standing at the ocean, or walking in the park, or just walking down a very big, busy street, that you just feel centered, and you feel like this is where I belong right now. That sense, it's a sense of fullness, um, or sometimes even when there's a sense of hunger, like I want to do more with this, or I want to do more. I want to explore that curiosity. I think without curiosity, um, I don't think kindness can really work without curiosity. I think we have to be curious about other people in order to be kind to them, uh, at a certain
Yeah,
degree.
I agree because the opposite would be judgment. Judgment. You have your own ideas, concepts about others, and that will get in the
Yeah,
way,
I mean,
right?
literally, like we have to be curious about literal, specific things about a person. Like, well, you see an elderly person, you go, well, I'm not really curious about them, so I guess I'm not going to help them cross the street. No, of course not. That's kind of silly. But but in a way, in helping them across the street, by the time you walk across the street with them and help them or guide them, or just you don't need to necessarily physically do anything, just accompany them, so that they feel more secure, then um, if you're not curious who they are by the time you get to the other side of the street, you might want to ask yourself, why not? You know, so because there's something of value in everybody, or most, there's a few exceptions.
It has been a meaningful conversation, David. Thank you so much for your presence. You were a lot of fun.
Oh, good, good. Well, thanks. You too. I you Very, very provocative. Nice.
Where can we find more information about you, your work, books, services, projects?
The people just come visit me. No, but that's not very practical. So I'll have to I'll have to default to my website. It's Tabatsky.com, Tabatsky, Tabatsky.com. Then there's a lot there about different parts of my life and my work, all the books, some other things. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, people can visit there and they can contact me if they want. That's all good.
Great. Really great. Thank you so much again. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye for now, David.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about David Tabatsky, please visit his website, tabatsky.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.